at any given moment, we can also shift our reality. If you realize where you currently are is not where you want to be, you can and you do have the power within to change your reality.
Everyone has their own limit. Sometimes you need to hit that limit in order to realize, like, whoa, that was my limit and I don't want to get there again. Build new habits. Try something new. Reach out to your friends. That is not going to
I'm just sad.
Yeah, like I was just sad, and that is something that causes your lack of motivation.
We all go through it. You may be in it now. I may be in it. Maybe we've been in it for the whole year. We're all, like, it affects all of us.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are immune. Let's leave a little voicemail to our future selves
Oh,
for days that we're feeling unmotivated.
oh, okay. Welcome back to Voice Hugs, the podcast on being your best self and embracing all seasons of life with open arms. This is your host, Viv and Ro. Hello, hello. Hi, friends. Today we have an episode all about motivation. I know we mentioned this in a previous episode, probably somewhere in the middle, but for those of you who are tuning in on YouTube, we actually have a whole season of Voice Hugs episode just on Spotify and Apple. It's episodes 1 through 55.
Yes, we're on 72 now.
Yes.
So there's 72 episodes worth of Voice Hugs for you to catch up on if you didn't know that existed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's just on YouTube. It's just been season 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for those episodes in season 1, there's actually video as well. But at that time, Ro was in New York and I've been in LA. It's kind of cute.
We're literally in our closets.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a Zoom call.
The quality's like Zoom quality too.
Yeah. But I share all of that because in season 1, out of the 55 episodes that we have, our 2 most popular episodes were on the topic of motivation. What does that mean about us, family?
Yeah, for us and also for our viewers.
Yeah, both of these just shot up, I think. One of them was episode 26, the other one was 38.
Yeah.
And
we were talking about it before we were recording. We're like, what does this mean? And I was like, is it because we're all unmotivated sometimes? Is it because it's easier for someone who may not know us or who may not know about Voice Hugs to tune into something about motivation versus something that may be more personal about like a catch up, right? So I don't know, but I think it definitely is like a universal feeling of we all go through it.
Mm-hmm.
You may be in it now. I may be in it. Maybe we've been in it for the whole year in some aspects, but I think we're all, like, it affects all of us.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are immune.
I think something about motivation feels negative. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm lacking motivation. It almost feels like a bad thing. Like, oh, if I'm unmotivated, if I can't get out of bed, if I can't bring myself to do something, I feel bad about myself. Like, you're a shithead. Get out of bed. Go to the gym.
Or there's like guilt.
Guilt, yes.
Yeah. Guilt, negative feelings, voices in head.
Voices
if
in
you
your
haven't
head.
listened to this solo episode on the voices in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why, I don't know, I wonder if people relate to that as well. And maybe that's why those are such popular topics, because we don't want to feel unmotivated. But the thing is, as we all know, and as Rose shared, it's a universal feeling. It happens all the time. It will happen to you
soon, if not already.
It happens on a weekly basis for me.
A daily
Hourly.
basis.
Yeah, exactly. And so this episode is going to be dedicated to talking about motivation and how it has stayed the same for us throughout the years, but also how it has changed since the first 2 episodes that we recorded on motivation.
Which was 2 years ago?
Yes, the first one was in 2022 and the second one was in 2023. Yeah, so that's 2024 3.0.
Interesting.
Yes.
Viv re-listened to both the episodes. Did you feel anything listening back to young Viv and Ro?
Okay. I just cringed. I just cringed on camera. Yes, I did feel something.
She texted me many things.
Well, once we publish an episode, we don't listen back to it.
It's the thing where you kind of black out when you talk. We're a little better now, but then it's just one of those things where you have the conversation, kind of forget about it, you review it when you edit it, and then you just forget about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have not really listened to these past episodes, and the only time I do is if we're doing an episode like this. It's a similar topic, but we just want to review. Going back to those episodes, I was like, oh my God, I was in such a different place. And
say it out loud.
I was in such a different place. And I think motivation then looks so different from what motivation looks like now. I'll start with this. The first feeling I felt when listening to it was I felt so proud of myself for where I am now and the growth that I was able to feel from 2 years ago to now. I still feel unmotivated. I still have a hard time getting out of bed, but the way that I take care of myself now is very different than what was happening then.
So what was happening then?
This is the same thing that happened in that episode.
I know. They was just saying when we're listening to that episode, I just kept asking her questions. And for reasons that she'll explain very soon, she just dodged every single problem to the point where I was like, Viv, so what is it? What do you do when you feel unmotivated? And why do you feel unmotivated? And she's like, oh, Ro.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to be serious now. There are a lot of reasons why you can feel unmotivated. It could be like an external thing, it could be an internal thing. But I think at the time when we recorded that first episode, something that I realized I didn't mention in that episode that I'd like to bring up now is that if your mental health is not well, whether it's depression, anxiety, stress, that completely impacts your lack of motivation. And at that time of my life, I was probably at my darkest state. In the episode, I had talked about how I was really, really losing motivation when really I think I was trying to say that I was losing hope and that I really needed help from my friends. So anyways, what I wanted to say in this episode specifically for this is that before we talk about motivation and all the little things that you could do to find motivation for people who are going through something really, really hard, if you're in a season in your life or if you're at a mental place where you don't have that energy, it's not you. I wish then when I recorded that episode, I shared that you can give yourself a lot more grace and that motivation is the least of your worries. Like your number one priority is to take care of your mental health.
And when you do take care of your mental health and put yourself first, usually, eventually, the motivation, the inspiration, and all of that will come.
Yes, the energy will pick back up. And I think at the time when I recorded that, and also that being like our most listened to episode.
It was also one of our first few episodes, like dozens of episodes that we recorded too.
I just wanted to preface that, in case anyone is feeling that way. Because if I'm feeling that way, I would not build new habits, try something new, reach out to your friends. That is not going to
I'm just sad.
Yeah, I was just sad and that is something that causes your lack of motivation, right? Which I think we could segue into how has your surroundings, your feelings, where your headspace is at affect your motivation in general.
And before we segue there, I just want to take a moment to say how proud I am of you.
Thank you.
For, of course, the journey that you walked, but also being very open and vulnerable within like just the past 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Because it's not easy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can just feel her collapsing into herself.
Yeah, I think I would like, I just realized like we've never done an episode on depression, which I think both of us have been in that place before. Perhaps we're both not ready to talk about it, or it's not a fun thing to talk
It's
about.
heavy.
Yeah, it's really heavy, and that's perhaps something we can talk about in a future episode. But I don't know. I guess in the moment when I re listened to that, I wanted to let the people who might be feeling that way know that that is a thing too. You know, sometimes when you don't bring something up, it's as if you're disregarding it. But I didn't want this episode to be that.
Yeah. And especially this time of year with the holidays upon us, I know it can be a very, like, sometimes it can be triggering, sometimes it can be like extra lonely, or it just brings up a lot of feelings.
Yes.
So it's normal anytime, but also this time of year to feel the way that you may feel, regardless if you're motivated, unmotivated. If you're like, yes, I can't wait to wrap up the year and just have a great holiday, or if you're like, I haven't done anything, what am I doing with my life? So we're going to talk about this whole spectrum of things, because I think between Viv and I, we've gone through like the spectrum of like the whole spectrum of emotions this year, and obviously within like all the previous years too.
Yeah.
So your question was, how has our environment added to or taken away from motivation?
What has your levels of motivation look like this year based on your current season?
I'm excited to hear from you first.
Oh, great.
Because you painted a beautiful picture of what you were.
Mm.
And so you can share, like, I don't know, where you are now and what that looks
Yeah. Okay, so well, I guess this is great because now that you guys have context of where I was 2 years ago, I definitely feel like since then I've taken a lot of steps to take care of myself and find help, whether it's reaching out to friends when I was at my ultimate low, or even seeing a psychiatrist, a psychologist, like all of that. I've been doing it for years. And so more recently, I actually feel like my depression goggles have lifted. And with that being said, it's been a lot more easy to manage these dips in energy level. When my energy level dips, I'm no longer going to a place of, you're a shithead. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you doing all of these things? I think when your mental health is not in a good place, it's very easy to then just double down on you are the worst, or, you know, the talk, the negative self-talk in your head. And so I think that has been very different this year. Life is still lifing in the sense that I'm not exactly where I want to be. Living at home has been one of the biggest challenges of this year, living with my parents, living with people in the family who are sick. With all of that, what I really realized this year is when you take care of your mental health, it allows for you to go through these dips in your life. Like, it's totally normal to feel sad. It's totally normal to feel unmotivated. It's totally normal to feel guilt and all of these quote negative feelings. But when you get there, it's not doubling down. And I think that has been the biggest difference. And because I'm not doubling down, I'm allowing myself to just feel unmotivated and lift up.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't know how to ask this without it being, I think I'll be fine. But just before, like, how long would it usually, like, how long would you usually be in these dips for versus now? And then on top of the, obviously, like, the immense amount of work you've put in to get to where you're now, like, are there other things that have also helped?
In the past, or at least specifically talking about 2 years ago, it was like a year-long thing. I wasn't even aware of my energy levels, and I was just fully lost in my feels and feeling very hopeless. Yeah, so I would say like that was a really just a dip.
But the crazy thing is, you were very functioning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you did the most for the
Mm-hmm.
podcast during that time in your life at work. Like, you were balancing everything.
I think that's a scary thing about depression, is that you can be totally functioning and
Yeah.
people don't know what's happening internally. Yeah, so even though I looked productive, I think it was the days where like I really could not get up. It was a different kind of not being able to get up. It was like I really don't want to do anything anymore. Like this is just not it for me. But now I would say that it's pretty easy for me to get myself out of an unmotivated state. I think I'm more aware that this is temporary versus before it was like I don't know if this is temporary. This might be a long, long, long time, right? And now it's like, no, I think next week my energy will pick up again. No, I think the next time I talk to my friends, it'll pick up again. I know. I like trust it now.
I think it's like with time and just with going through it, you have more data points on yourself and your mental state and how you can or can't bounce back depending on where you are.
Yeah.
And there's also this level of trust and acceptance in yourself to know that, hey, it's going to happen. Like, and I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to run away from it. But I just know that if it does happen, tomorrow's a new day. Or if the sun will come out tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, it'll come out next week.
Yeah. Actually, bringing this back to what you're sharing about how like productive I was, I think that in a sense was just showing how little I knew how to take care of myself because I was in such a bad place, but I was still being extra, extra productive this time around. And I think you feel this way too with your years of burnout on YouTube, that when you start taking care of yourself, you realize that that productivity or like the amount of output, yeah, the
It's so cute.
the amount of input to exput. What was I trying to say?
The amount of when you throw yourself into productivity and you focus so much on the output, it's also a reflection of your mental state and where you're at. This is just like what I'm adding in because I agree and I feel the same way. It could also be a form of escaping yourself.
Yeah.
Or it's like you feel so hopeless and not in control of your own life that you busy yourself with things that you can quote unquote control, which is your exput. Or output.
Your exput. I think this year, maybe just being in our early 20s, and I think especially for you being pregnant.
In her 30s,
Did I say 20?
Yeah.
I think I still wish that I was there.
But see, that's the thing. A part of me like kind of wishes, but a part of me is like, no. I'm glad where I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, in our early 30s, I have definitely felt that we have both been able to put ourselves first and take care of ourselves and be more in tune with our body, our mental health, our physical energy, all of that a little bit more, which has, I think, also helped motivation in general.
Yeah, and to be able to communicate that with each other too in a healthy, productive, constructive way.
So I'm curious last time. With being pregnant, lots of changes for you this year. I'm curious how that has impacted your levels of motivation. How has motivation just changed in general? Like what motivates you now being pregnant versus before?
The interesting thing is, and I touched upon this on my solo episode, the one right before this, so episode 71.
Yes.
You know how like I've made so many videos on like how to be productive, how to like know your why, find your why, how to stress less, how to blah, blah, blah. I think one thing that will completely shift your state of being, your existence, is something like carrying a child. It's interesting. I was talking to my team in New York, like the Beauty Within team. This specific conversation that we had was about engagement because one of them got engaged. And we're just saying with this step that leads to the next of marriage, that leads to the next of having children, is just a progression of letting go of yourself and kind of melding more into either like a couple or, you know, it's like no longer about making decisions just for yourself. Like first with marriage, right? It's like, oh, you have to consider this other person because like if you don't, then like why are you getting married, right? And then with having a kid or like with just being pregnant, it's the things you used to care about. Viv, friends listening, the things I used to care about, they don't matter. They really don't matter. And I think to like answer your question and tie it back to motivation, the way that I'm motivated has shifted completely. And I know, like whether you've gone through this yourself or whether you know people who have gone through it, most women, at least for like their first trimester of pregnancy, is just survival because your body's literally growing this thing from nothing to something. And I think it just takes so much energy, and you may be nauseous, you may be tired all the time. Like there's so many hormonal changes. That alone, just like the survival mode, and like you just need to get by and make sure you drink enough water and you can hold your food down. That I think completely shifts your priorities. It's like, I just need to make the day. Like, I just need to survive the day, right? When I was going through that, and to be very, like, I'm very lucky that, like, my nausea, my, like, first trimester wasn't that bad. I was just tired all the time. But even then, I was like, how did our parents, and, like, a lot of women today still, how do they grow a baby and still show up at work? And my aunt was just telling me, she's like, yeah, I used to work at a bank, and then, I just go throw up in the bathroom when I come back, and carry on with my day. I'm like, how do you do that? But I think that just goes to show that when you're going through something like that, it just puts so much into perspective. And I think that's just the beginning. And then as your belly gets bigger and bigger, and as things become more and more real, and as there's more appointments, as you start seeing, like, you hear the heartbeat and you see them on, like, with like the, what is it, like the ultrasounds and everything, it becomes more and more real, and you further shed this, I guess, like expectation of who you should be. It becomes this beautiful thing of leaning more into, you just are who you are. I think with like birth and raising a kid, like you start thinking about all of these things of like, what kind of mom do I want to be, what kind of person do I want to be for my kid? And I think it turns from like a very, I don't want to say it like selfish or self-centered, but it is just like me, and like I'm like, before all of this, it's like, who am I and what do I want to do and what is the life that I want to live? But now it's shifted a lot more towards like for others, like for someone else. And especially when it's like a little baby and a little petite and a little helpless thing, especially when they're first born, and the fact that you get to shape their world and create their experiences. And like, if we still have voice hugs in 10-15 years, we'll probably be complaining about how, despite how much we try to untraumatize our children, they will still be traumatized in some way or another. But like, we're trying our best.
I'd love to see that. Yeah. No, I think like what you're sharing is essentially, okay, I hear this a lot. Obviously, I'm not with child, but when people have kids, there's a new sense of meaning and purpose in your life, right? And so you might not necessarily have to be pregnant in order to have meaning or purpose. Something could have happened to you where that shifts your mindset or like your priority, and that then you become driven, or there's like a new purpose for you. And I think especially with being pregnant, and especially having the now new responsibility of being someone's parent, that becomes a different source of motivation. Maybe before, motivation was a lot of, like you said, you're thinking about yourself. I'm thinking about myself right now.
Like, I want to make money, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is not my main source of motivation, but it's just the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah. And then it shifts to something more,
it's like beyond you.
And I think something that I also want to note here is that there's a difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, and what you're sharing right now is intrinsic. So if, for those of you who don't know the difference, intrinsic motivation is motivation that comes from within. It's something that you do because it's pleasurable, it's enjoyable, it gives you meaning, it makes you feel good, there's purpose behind it. Extrinsic motivation is, as you said, you are motivated to get something external, like something outside of yourself. So that could be money, rewards. I think when we're kids, a lot of the motivation that we have is actually extrinsic. If you do a good job, you get a sticker, you get a gold star, you get external validation from your parents.
Go out and play.
Yeah. So those are like the different types. They're not exclusive from each other. You can have both in a situation, and I have the perfect example for that. But what research shows is that intrinsic motivation lasts more long term. It becomes something that you're able to kind of pull yourself to do. You want to do it because it's something inside of you, versus if it's external, it's so dependent on something else, something that's out of your control. It's good for like a quick, okay, I'm going to try really hard on this test to get that A, but it's not something that might help you get to that far away distance.
So long-term goal.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the moving goalpost. If you're externally motivated. Intrinsic. What is the opposite intrinsic?
Extrinsic?
Extrinsic. It is, right?
I think so.
It's one of those things I like. You know how sometimes you look at how a word is spelled and you're
Yeah.
just like, this is not how you spell it, but it is. Anyway, so if you're externally motivated, it can be like that never-ending rat race, or like the moving goalpost of like, if I just do this, I'll be happy. And then you get there, you're like, ooh, I'm not happy. Let me pick like another external thing to like reach for. So I think that's kind of like a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What was your perfect example of an external and an internal?
Okay, so I think I've been able to track my motivation levels the most this year through Boys Hub Season 2.
Interesting.
I think part of this, again, going back to what we were sharing, is because we are more aware of ourselves and we can feel when things aren't feeling good, energies are feeling low, something's a little bit off. I'm tracking my feelings every week. I realized that even with something that means so much to me, like I think our conversations are really meaningful and impactful, and I love Boys Hugs. I just like love the whole thing. Even though that's like an intrinsic motivation, there are still extrinsic motivation that impact how I feel. One of the biggest differences this year is we're on YouTube, which is like different for me, and the numbers are just so different compared to when it was just Spotify and Apple, right? I think YouTube's algorithm is just a little bit more like up and down, which is something new. And so I started realizing I have really high energy when I feel like an episode is gonna do well. I'm like, oh my God, this is exciting. I wanna pump all the content out. I am just really excited for this episode. It's a great topic. I feel really good about the conversation. And then on a week where the episode is like, just okay, it's not bad, it's just like, okay, I'm like, oh, nobody cares. This is not important. Like, why are we even doing this? And then I also noticed that when I get a text from you, I'm super energized. I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, she's excited, I'm excited, I'm gonna do all of this stuff right now, right? And then if I don't hear from you for a bit, I'm like, oh, this is, I don't know if I wanna do this anymore. It's so hard. And so catching myself feeling this way, I realized that, whoa, the external motivation is not something that I want to rely on. It's not something you can rely on, because then you're depending on something that's outside of you, versus on the weeks where I'm like, you know what? I am so freaking proud of myself for my growth, and I want to share that. I want to share my knowledge. I want to share my friendship with Ro. I want to share like the types of conversations that we have, because I believe it's like meaningful and impactful. That brings me to like the finish line every time. And so, yeah, I think I share this example because there's a difference between the two. And prior to this year, I didn't really realize that there was a difference. I was just like, why is it so hard for me today? I don't really know. I'll try something different. But really figuring out what is that thing that drives you from the inside. I think that is what will ultimately help you in the long run and has hope for the future.
And I think to add to one thing you just said before this on how you don't need to be pregnant to like go through this life change. I think whenever something big happens in your life, like capital BIG, whether it is entering a new season, going through loss, going through something as major, sure, as like getting whatever, right? Like as anything like this can help shift your perspective. I also still believe that at any given moment, we can also shift our reality. If you realize where you currently are is not where you want to be, you can and you do have the power within to change your reality. I think that's one thing that I just made a face because I'm like a little bit ashamed of myself for like saying stuff like that. But this is like with an ex, I was just like, don't wait for something terrible to happen to you for you to change like your habits or whatever. Obviously, I didn't say it that way. It came from a place of love, but like I did mean it, right? Like, especially because loss was something so front of mind for me that it did take loss for me to completely 180 my life and become like grow into the person that I am today. I feel like I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. I know that we all have it in ourselves to change and to be the people I want to be. I wish sometimes it didn't take something like that for you to be like, oh, I want to do something about my reality.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's hard though.
It's been very hard.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just like in your day to day, like nothing's really rocking your boat. It's easy to just cruise and do what you know because it's comfortable. It's like our safe space. To change things is to like completely shake things up. The interesting thing about life is that sometimes you're so unmotivated and you reach such a low point that like you're so sick of yourself that you're just like, I don't want to be here anymore. And that can also be motivation.
Yeah.
Right. So I think one of my creative friends, we're all talking and she's like, yeah, she has like the opposite problem. She's like, I just keep saying yes to things. I'm going on trips. It's amazing. I'm saying yes to projects. I'm like living my life, but like I have no balance. I just work all the time. What do I do? The solution that our friends actually presented to her was actually maybe just work until you can't work. Like it's not conventional advice. It's not good advice, but I feel like good is subjective, but I feel like sometimes you do need to work yourself to a point of no return. And then like these are things that we have to come to the realization ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Like on one hand, it's like, yes, you should have more balance. Yes, you should take time. Yes, you should take care of yourself. But at the same time, it's like until you get there, you won't know. And also on like playing like devil's advocate a little, it's also while you can, while we are young, do all the things that we want to do. And then when you are in your 30s, when you are married, when you potentially have kids, like you won't be able to live that life anyway. So I don't know.
No, I think everyone has their own limit. And some people, it just takes more for them to hit that limit. And sometimes you, as you said, you need to hit that limit in order to realize like, whoa, that was my limit and I don't want to get there again, right? And I think both of us have experienced that in our younger years. And that's probably a huge difference, as we were sharing earlier about like the differences between motivation now versus motivation then. I don't think I would let myself hit the limit anymore, but who knows? I think I might still be trying to hit the limit with something right now in my life.
But it's like we're testing ourselves in different areas.
Yeah.
I think at least for something like mental health and potential like depression,
Yeah.
we kind of know. And then before we even get there, we'll just be like, all right, let's check in. Let's do some things that we know we can do to help ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to go there again.
No, it's a scary place. Yeah. So I totally hear what you said. Sometimes it's just do it. Just do what you're doing, and then you'll get to a place where it's when you don't feel good anymore. And it sounds like, honestly, it sounds like for your creator friend, the fact that she asked that question, she's getting to that.
She's getting close.
Yeah. And so it is when you start asking yourself, something doesn't feel good. I don't know if I'm going in the right direction. That is a sign that you're already starting to feel like something is not something you want to change something.
Yeah. And sometimes with this threshold too, you can like poke your toe in a few times, you can step in it for a bit, but it's like when you're really, really like face against the wall and you're like, ooh, I don't like this. So it takes time
Yeah.
too. But yeah, isn't that interesting that we seek motivation? Like we all seek motivation, right? Like we all seek inspiration. Like we want to feel good. We want to feel like, oh, like I feel so good. Like I can do all of these things. And sometimes it happens when you least expect it. But then I think that just goes to show how wonderfully we were created as humans, that when you're at literal rock bottom, you will get a boost of energy.
That is very true.
Right. And then it's also if you are open enough and aware enough to like listen and to hear these signs from within too, because it's not a pleasant place to be. Yeah. But sometimes you do have to the something before dawn. The night is the darkest before that's it's definitely not that saying. Is that the saying? The night is darkest before dawn. So remember you're the captain of your ship. And
the sun always rises.
The sun always comes
without fail. I want to highlight something that you shared about if you are open or aware enough to listen to what's happening within. I think that just ties so perfectly back to the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic. I think because we have been in a place where we've done a lot more of that internal work and we've tried really, really hard in our 20s to get there, it's been a lot easier for us now. But with that being said, I think it's never too late. And that, just as Rose said, you can change your perspective today if you'd like to.
And it's easier these days, but it's still hard. I think we're just more aware, which is what makes it easier. But pure motivated, unmotivated graph wise, like there's still a lot of fluctuation. Yeah, but I think it's like as life circumstances change, as seasons change, it starts becoming very different. Like just to answer your question more specifically earlier, like the things that I used to value and care about and the things that used to motivate me no longer motivate me as much as they used to. And I think it'll just continue to change as my belly gets bigger and like as this child comes into this world and as the kid grows. And I think it's a very beautiful thing. Let's leave a little voicemail to our future selves.
Oh.
For days that we're feeling unmotivated.
Oh. Okay.
What would you say to future you if you're feeling unmotivated?
For my future self.
Hey, Viv.
Hey, girl. Hey.
I feel great right now.
What's up? I would tell her on that day, rest. I feel like rest is always the first sign. I'm like, you know what? You need to slow down. You need to rest and you need to take inventory. Take inventory. Look around. What's happening in your life right now? And be kinder to yourself and just give yourself that grace because there's probably something going on to make you feel unmotivated. Take all the rest you need, slow down, and go from there.
I love that. What you just said just reminded me of a reel that I saw. This girl was like, I just stumbled across a new way to psychoanalyze your friends. She's like, the voices in her head, we either are I people, you people, or we people. And then just from what you said, you're a you person. And I think I'm also a you person. Like when we talk to ourselves, like you need to you need to get it together, you need to blah, 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 right? And I mean, she didn't explain what all of them mean, but I think if you are a we person, you are blessed.
Okay.
Because you are a little fairy that's just a joy to the world, who's so kind to yourself, right?
Yes, I could feel the difference if I was to have said, we got this. It's like combining yourselves, all of yourselves together, and it's like giving yourself that extra backup for like that extra hand. Then we got this.
Which is also very different from I got this.
Yeah.
Or you got this, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
All right, well, you got to start your voice memo with a we.
Hello, Ro in the future. I hope we're doing well. I wonder how far in the future this is.
It's tomorrow.
I know. I feel like if it's like a really, really hard day, I mean, but the thing is, this isn't me copping out.
Okay.
But I just feel like, I don't know, with this new identity, I like low-key feel invincible. I just feel like we got this. Like we will figure it out. Nothing is unfigure outable. Nothing is impossible, especially like tag teaming with James, being parents together. So I think from like the parenting front, that is fun. So maybe I'm just trying to get really specific, but like, what do I tell myself? Because I need to feel it. I feel it in like the resistance with like creating. Okay, so we'll go from there. Hey girl.
Hey, girl. Hey, Ro.
Hey Ro. How are you doing? I'm sure we're doing great. I'm sure BB is growing and thriving. But how is your heart, and how much or how little have you been writing? Wherever you are, I just want you to remember that. We just want you to remember that. We just want you to remember that this is something that you care about. This is something that's very meaningful to you and us. This is very meaningful to this. So
It's hard, you guys.
It's so hard. I'm just gonna not think about it too much. There's something that's very important to you. Sharing your craft and helping people through lived experience is something that is very important to you. So just remember that no matter what you're going through, remember that you're doing this for your babies and your future babies, and you want to help create a world in which they feel loved and supported and not alone and heard. And shouldn't everyone feel that way? So that was like an intrinsic reminder of the why.
I'm gonna have to clip that and just play it for myself on those days. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode on motivation, and we have 2 other they're not motivational episodes. They're episodes on motivation. We'll leave them all in our description. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please follow, like, subscribe, all of the fun comments, stars, all of that really helps support us, and it helps people all around the world find our podcast. If you haven't seen our Boys Hugs shop, we have greeting cards. Yay! www.boyshugspodcast.com. You can always shoot us an email if you have any episode topic suggestions, questions. You just want to say hello. hello@boyshugspodcast.com.
Yay! And to go back to the cards, what better time than this time of year to get greeting cards, to write your loved ones, to share hugs, written hugs around the world.
Yes. Yay! Sending everyone the biggest voice hug wherever you are. Voice hug!